gutty performance from Caitlin Clark and what was an encouraging win for the Fever over the Dream. The loss to the Golden State Valkyries would have you thinking the Fever need to be relegated and kicked out of the WNBA. But that's why you don't crash out too hard after one bad game. It's been an inconsistent ride for Indiana and for Clark as well, who's had to fight through a lot of injuries. But I think the encouraging thing from Cece was the fight that she showed on the floor. Clearly, she's not quite at 100%, still working her way back, hasn't found her three ball yet. But what she did was attack. She used the physicality against the defenders by putting her head down and going to the basket. That opened things up for her playmaking, which, of course, is another genius aspect of her game. Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aaliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the scoreboard. But you saw Clark sort of gaining her rhythm as the game went along, sort of returning to her form as the game went along, finding that pep in her step as the game went along, even though the shooting numbers were tour dates again, and she's got to find that shooting stroke at some point. Look, it can't go on all year, but you understand where some of those struggles come from when you deal with a quad injury and then a groin injury, and you're thrust back into the lineup and you're trying to find your way. But I do think it was the way that Clark found her way to the basket that was the difference in this game, really. That was what changed the dynamics of this game for her and the team. She did this a lot last year. She hasn't done it as much this year. And it's just, all right, I'm going to accept that contact. I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to score on you. And one. Put the points on the board. Caitlin Clark doing it there. Here's a closer look at that play to sort of give you, an idea of what took place. And the she accepts the contact, gives some back herself, and ultimately gets the bucket. By the way, some size on that Dream team, obviously, with Griner inside and Jones got in foul trouble, which helped. Jordan Canada in the first half was cooking for the Dream, and that's really what changed the game. Is how many three? What did she have? 6 threes in the first half. She's a 21% three-point shooter. I'm glad the Fever and Stephanie White didn't overreact by sending extra help toward her when clearly it was the scouting report to leave her open, right? Due to her shooting percentages. Sometimes that happens in basketball because there can be a difference also between shooting great and playing great. Not to say Canada didn't have a great game. Don't get me wrong. Well, she did. She played great. But that more goes for Caitlin Clark. And that driving opened things up for her for these kind of plays, the kind of plays that just make her special, that make her different than everybody else and can get the Fever really humming. You can see, wait, first off, let's look at her turn the gas on a little bit here. I ain't seen that in a minute. Scoop. Pull back. Oh, there you go. Dime. AB. What a feed. I mean, that's the stuff that only Caitlin Clark is capable of doing. Now, she did have a lot of help from her teammates in this one. Kelsey Mitchell really, really picked up the slack early in the game. And then also it was Sophie Cunningham, I thought, who was terrific in this one. This is a play where Clark finds her on an inbound. It was just Sophie's energy, moving without the basketball, hustle plays. She did all the little stuff in this game as the Fever pulled away. And then the lineups the Fever were using, they put some different looks out there. Dantas got a lot of run in this game. She's a threat to shoot the ball. That spreads the defense out a little bit. Ari McDonald still got a decent amount of run in this game, a lot of run in this game. You saw Clark go off the ball in some of those times to mix results, but I saw them find their footing. I saw some encouraging signs there. There was one play where Cece dove to the basket. AB didn't find her. Clark got a little frustrated that she didn't find her, but it was still an encouraging sign. I also saw, Clark hit that 1-3 from the corner. They're trying to free her up for easier shots. This is a work in progress, but they did give her the ball and let her do her thing too. And that really, got that offense. It's that pace that she's able to play at. I mean, they almost scored 100 points. Remember, WNBA games are not as long. Almost scored 100 points. So all in all, you have to come away encouraged, and you hope that Caitlin Clark is finding her rhythm. If there's one negative, I would say it remains this issue with Natasha Howard, who hasn't quite fit in perfectly. There's moments of frustration I see between Clark and Howard, or specifically the way Howard will take the ball and take it up the floor, and Clark will throw her hands in the air. There was a worse example of this, but this was one. Howard gets it, and Clark's like, well, I don't have the ball. Then Howard travels. Clark eventually gets the ball back. It was an adventure to get it. And Natasha Howard's inability to shoot from the outside hurts in that fit. And not to mention, I could see it body language wise, the frustration at times when Howard gets the ball and brings it up the floor and Clark doesn't get the ball to bring it up the floor. Because as much as Caitlin Clark is buying into what the coach is saying about playing off the ball and mixing up the looks, she knows, she said it plainly, they're at their best when she's got the ball. And when there's the opportunity to get her the ball and let her bring the ball up the floor, and she doesn't get it in favor of someone who's not a threat at all in that situation to really score or play make, that's where I think the frustration comes into play. But, it was a good Atlanta team that they beat. And I think the most encouraging signs were Clark just starting to attack, because eventually that's going to make the defense collapse. And she needs to trust herself, her body, in order to do that. But once you do that enough, you're going to it's either like blow the whistle or not, bro. That's the incentive you put on the referees in that case, because she's not getting the whistle on the off-ball contact and the grabbing and the holding and stuff. And then they're so far up on her to try to take away the three. It will also make her three looks cleaner, because the defense is going to have to back up to respect the drive. So I think that was the most encouraging thing we saw. But then again, the way the Fever were just able to get things going offensively. And there's been those flashes. That's why I outlined where some of the struggles or some of the friction may come from. I called the Valkyries' loss what it was, which was terrible and pathetic. But I also hesitated to go all the way off the ledge, because, again, there's been a lot of ups and downs for the Fever this season. The Bonner thing, the injuries, Caitlin Clark being injured. I mean, how does it get any bigger than that? The WNBA statement about the fans in Indianapolis, Stephanie White being gone for a while, just so much that they've had to juggle. This was the third game that they had a healthy roster. And there have been so many encouraging signs too, which show up in the body of work statistically and show up in some of the wins that they have. Lynx, Liberty, Dream. I mean, they got good wins. And as long as Caitlin Clark is on the floor and can work her, I don't know if she'll ever be at full strength this season because of the myriad of things and the way the WNBA schedule is. And they have to be very careful managing this schedule stretch before All-Star break. Keep that in mind, because they got the game Sunday against the Wings, and they got a back-to-back on the East Coast. I don't know who decided to schedule that on Tuesday and Wednesday in Boston against the Sun, and then in New York against the Liberty in Brooklyn. Right before they got to go to All-Star, it doesn't make any sense. So you got to be careful to manage Caitlin Clark, who said she was sore before the game after getting back into action, but she started to get her rhythm back. And look, that's always going to be the difference with the Fever flourishing is Caitlin Clark, cooking? Is she doing her thing, that the things that make her different? Because it's not just, when you play her off the ball, free up for shooting, that takes away that playmaking aspect. And again, I'm not saying you can't do that some. I do believe in mixing the diet a little bit. But the main course is her with the ball in her hands and making the decisions.